Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean. I hope you guys had an absolutely wonderful New Year's/New Year's Eve celebration. But today we're going to talk about a politician who definitely did not close out her 2024 in any wonderful way. And that, of course, is New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who decided that it would be a good idea to go on a PR blitz campaign to talk about the safety of the subway. And then immediately, high-profile incident after high-profile incident ended up occurring in the subway, including people getting killed, shoved in front of trains, and a woman being set on fire who ultimately ended up dying due to the fact that an illegal migrant that the same Governor Kathy Hochul is protecting decided to set her on fire. So it was a disaster from top to bottom. We got to talk about this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
I'm on the subway train heading out to Queens Center. I have a lot of, not quite last minute, but I have holiday shopping to do. I've got an adorable 2-year-old granddaughter, so it's a lot more fun to shop.
So right off the top, this video is ridiculous and absurd for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Governor Kathy Hochul, for those of you who are unaware, works in the capital of New York, which is where the governor lives, which is Albany, New York, which is nowhere near Queens Center Mall, where she's supposedly doing this holiday shopping. In addition to that, she is actually a Buffalo-based politician who ended up going to the governor's office through Andrew Cuomo resigning. So again, this already from the jump is a ridiculous and absurd PR stunt about how safe the subway is, how amazing it is, how the conductors are oh so friendly, when in reality, in actuality, nothing could be further from the truth. Now, I'm not saying that if you ride the subway, you will definitely be victimized by a criminal. Obviously, that's absurd. Millions of people ride the subway all the time. But the idea that crime is down in the subway and not significantly up is a lie being perpetuated by the left, by the crime denialists, and honestly, they couldn't have picked a worse time to decide to push this narrative. One of our favorites on this channel, Emma Vigeland, a week prior to Governor Kathy Hochul doing this stunt, decided to tweet out this, which just goes to show you how stupid the left wing thinks you are for being concerned about crime that, by the way, 100% exists. So this is from December 13th, 2024. Hope to see some crime today, fingers crossed. That 7-figure paycheck from the Daily Wire is calling my name. And she posts a picture of the New York City subway from a train, and this is supposed to make us feel like, oh my god, the right wing is so dumb for being worried about crime.
I can take the subway where we need to go, and I want all New Yorkers to feel safe, which is why we've added so many more National Guard, over 250 more people, to make sure that your ride is as safe as it can be.
Now, among the reasons why I love that particular tweet from Emma Vigeland and obviously Governor Kathy Hochul riding the subway talking about how safe it is, and don't worry, she put National Guard just because it's so safe. She wanted the National Guard to see how safe it is because it really goes to show you that this elitist attitude from Democratic Party officials and from the progressive left is shared. It is a shared attitude that if you're concerned about the criminality in the subway system, you're just a dumb rube, a dumb idiot who doesn't know anything about New York City. And of course, this is being told to us by a politician from Buffalo that spent her whole life working in Albany, again, a career politician, and a spoiled brat rich girl from New Jersey who's living in New York to live out her fantasies, possibly on her parents' dime in part. Again, the crime denialism, the protection of the criminal is something that is shared by the establishment Democratic Party and by the progressive left. The idea that the criminals are the victims and that we shouldn't do anything and we shouldn't prosecute anyone for anything is a commonality between the far left and the mainstream establishment Democratic Party. This is why Governor Kathy Hochul is also a champion of the very same bail reform law that the progressive left lauds as a success, even though its failures are obvious to everybody who can understand numbers, facts, and statistics. And speaking of the stats, Governor Kathy Hochul was confronted with those numbers when she was talking about how safe the subway 100% is. I mean, she sent the National Guard in there in order to show you how safe it is, because deploying the army to the subway really makes you feel like there's no problems in the subway. And this is a perfect example of her being smacked right in the face, metaphorically, with that reality.
I say a lot of things with statistics, and I see the percentage that crime is down 42% since 2021. But if you look back to pre-pandemic, and I know you like to say that overall crime is down 12% since the pandemic.
So first off, I love the setup for this question for Governor Kathy Hochul, because she set up the argument based on the parameters of we're only looking at the numbers post 2021. Now, she could argue that because she took office in 2021, that's all that she should be blamed for, but in reality, she was the lieutenant governor under Andrew Cuomo. The only reason that she is in office and not Andrew Cuomo is because he was forced to resign due to a very shady attack on him by Attorney General who wanted to be Governor Letitia James. So the idea that we would just start arbitrarily from 2021 when everybody's talking about crime as compared to 2019, again, prior to bail reform, prior to the Black Lives Matter effect and the George Floyd riots, is an absurdity. And this is an exact example why, because while the governor's saying, oh, crime down, subway 12%, nothing to worry about it, everything's all safe, we're all good, just everybody cheer Governor Kathy Hochul, the numbers since, of course, the Black Lives Matter riots are absolutely startling.
Say a lot of things with statistics, and I see the percentage that crime is down 42% since 2021. But if you look back to pre-pandemic, and I know you like to say that overall crime is down 12% since the pandemic, but murders are up 200%, felony assault is up 55%, and burglary is up 140%. So are you saying that this is progress?
Are you talking about statewide, city, or subway?
No, crime in the transit system. I'm sorry, Governor. Yes, crime in the subway system.
Okay, want to answer that?
You see that response? You see that weak nonsense from the governor who's talking about a 12% decline since 2021 after the major spike, when confronted with the reality that homicide is up 200% in the subway, you have assaults up 55%, burglaries up 140%, she immediately tries to pass it off to somebody else. But as if things couldn't get worse, the very same day that she decided to do all this nonsense related to the subway, post pictures of herself taking selfies with people on the subway, by the way, with a massive guard protecting her as she, quote unquote, shopped at Queens Center Mall. And by the way, definitely 100% either took a helicopter, a plane, or an SUV back to the Capitol. She ended up being confronted with an illegal migrant who set a woman on fire in an absolutely horrific video that was caught by everyday New Yorkers in the subway, and that woman was identified recently.
Natasha, that's right. The victim, 57-year-old Debrina Kwam. Police tell us that it was here in Toms River where she last lived in this senior living community. Now, as expected, neighbors shocked to hear that she was the victim of that senseless act of violence, the homeless woman who was burned alive in a subway car in Coney Island last Sunday morning. Now, we knocked on a door and a woman answered. She told us that she bought this home in April, and in May, she says a woman by the name of Debrina rang her doorbell looking for her mother. She told her she was the new owner, but she could take down her information. The woman, Debrina, she says, told her that she didn't have a phone. It was about a 15-minute conversation, and then she says she hopped back in the cab and left.
So one of the reasons why I waited so long to actually do this particular story is because it was taking forever to identify the woman behind this, and there was a lot of misinformation and intentionally laid out misinformation on this person's identity. Early on, there was a photograph of a very young, attractive white woman circulating, and people were saying that the person at the center of this that was set on fire was obviously this woman and this illegal immigrant who, by the way, was once deported from the United States, who had committed multiple different crimes and, of course, was protected by New York State's sanctuary state laws, New York City's sanctuary city laws.
Now, police arresting 33-year-old Sebastian Zapeta, migrant from Guatemala, who entered the country illegally in 2018. They say he allegedly lit Kwam's clothes on fire. Police believed she was homeless and sleeping on the subway when she was set on fire. Zapeta has been charged with first-degree murder. It took some time, however, to identify the victim, and that's because her body was burned beyond recognition. They had to use fingerprinting and dental records as well as DNA testing. Now, Olga, the woman we spoke to, tell us that when she found out the name through the media, she knew right away that there was a connection. She remembered that last name from the documents when closing on her home.
Let in by border czar Kamala Harris, because we can't ever vet anybody at the border. But in reality, I knew that that was not the case because the woman was standing while she was set ablaze. And to me, this was an obvious indication that she was some kind of homeless person, somebody dealing with some kind of mental issues themselves, because if you were not high on drugs or not severely mentally ill and somebody set you on fire, if you watch that video, which I will link some version of it in the description, maybe tied to a local news segment, you would imagine that that person would have been running around and acting all crazy because they were set on fire, but in reality, that woman seemed to stand as she was set ablaze in an absolutely tragic incident. So somebody being 57 years old, a former person at an assisted living facility who ended up homeless on the streets of Brooklyn, makes far more sense as the victim of that particular crime. But again, it just goes to show you that while the elites, both in politics and of course in digital media, are talking down the crime issue, saying it's no big deal, telling you to shut up, you dumb idiot, in reality, the people who are victimized are the most vulnerable. Mentally ill, elderly woman that was living on the streets set on fire by the very criminals that people like Governor Kathy Hochul and Emma Vigeland and the majority of the online left deny exists. By the very same people, by the way, that they want to protect. Illegal migrants that are criminals in the United States of America. And again, these are the people that advocate for the sanctuary cities. And again, this is not an isolated incident. Murder being up 200% is something that you guys can understand in the abstract, but in reality, when you look at the data, what we found out in the beginning of 2024 is that more people were being killed or had been killed in the previous 4 years since 2020 on the New York City subway system than had been killed in the previous 15 years. Now, I know a left-wing crime denial tactic is to say this many millions of people ride the subway and only this few people get killed, but in reality, what we should be doing is comparing like for like, and when you find out that again 30-something people were killed in 15 years on the subway, and that same number was surpassed in mid or early to mid 2024 in just 4 years, there's a dramatic spike in subway crime. When you see burglaries and robberies being up, that is a dramatic spike. Now, in addition to that, we also got reports shortly after this woman being set on fire of somebody who stabbed 2 individuals on the subway in Queens. One of those individuals died, and this was believed to be, at the time, another murder in the subway. But in reality, when we looked into that story, what we ended up finding out was that the man who did the stabbing was defending himself against 5 armed robbers. He stabbed 2 of those robbers, one of them died, and this was considered a justified act of self-defense. Now, thankfully, that man at the center of that story, who was woken up to a robbery committed by 5 people against him, was not white because he was not charged with homicide like Daniel Penny. He actually was considered a defender by the Queens District Attorney, but that incident right there is another indication of subway criminality. In addition to that, we recently were greeted with supposedly a mentally distressed young man who decided to shove somebody into the subway in a video that is 15 seconds long but features 3 crimes. You have 2 people jumping the turnstiles at the beginning of it, and I will cut before the later video, but yeah, he ends up shoving a man in front of the train. That man ultimately ended up surviving that, and now we're told that this kid had a sad sack life. He's an innocent Bebe Angel Aladdin who is just experiencing mental illness, and honestly, I'm sick of the nonsense. I'm sick of painting the criminal as the victim, and I'm tired of hearing about the mental illness crisis that is only ever used to deflect away from the actions of the criminal. None of these people gave a damn about Jordan Neely's mental illnesses, about the fact that he was able to walk away from a free facility that was covered for him by the New York City taxpayer, and then ultimately end up on that train threatening people until after he died, until after they could weaponize that to deny and deflect from the crime crisis.
To have some big news today. First, a horrific scene on the New York City subway. The video difficult to watch. A man injured after he was out of nowhere shoved in front of an oncoming train in Chelsea. The suspect quickly captured by police and just charged with attempted murder. Eyewitness News reporter Sonia Rincon has the story.
The chilling video obtained by Eyewitness News shows a man standing close to the edge of the platform behind a couple of ferry evaders and another man approaching and casually shoving him in front of a 1 train just after 1:30 this afternoon at 18th Street. First responders would go between the stopped subway cars to rescue the 45-year-old victim and take him to Bellevue Hospital. Sources tell us he is a New York City resident and is in stable condition tonight. Less than an hour after the attack, a suspect was in custody, identified as 23-year-old Kamel Hawkins of Brooklyn.
Now look, I've talked about a number of specific incidents in the city of New York as of right now, and I think it's important for you guys to understand that the double stabbing, which was a self-defense stabbing that resulted in no criminal charges, actually occurred in Queens, New York. The illegal migrant who set a woman on fire, that actually occurred in and around Coney Island in Brooklyn, New York, meaning that neither of those particular instances are covered by District Attorney Alvin Bragg. So we can expect that illegal migrant to be prosecuted somewhat reasonably in comparison to if it occurred in Manhattan. And obviously, the ruling of self-defense when you're fighting off 5 armed robbers makes a lot more sense when we're talking about something that occurred in Queens rather than Manhattan. However, this particular incident of a black male shoving somebody onto the subway track and now us hearing about mental illness occurred in the borough of Manhattan. And we all understand that District Attorney Alvin Bragg never wants to prosecute anyone for anything, seeks to promote racial revenge from the Manhattan District Attorney's office, and of course has prosecutors like the actual person litigating the case against Daniel Penny that will go out of their way to let murderers and attempted murderers off, as she told us in this interview that she did about a man who murdered somebody at an ATM, an elderly Asian man, because he wanted $300.
So I'm going to give you an example of something that I did with a recent case of mine, and this has never been done in my office. I had a murder case where the defendant did not intentionally kill the victim. He went into an ATM on the Upper West Side and tried to rob an individual. Unfortunately, it was an older individual. He was 86. And in the course of the robbery, he fell to the ground. And as a result, he died. This is, under the law, a felony murder, which is akin to intentional murder. However, when I first got the case, I learned, I took the time to learn about the defendant. And it was a strong case, so it wasn't about a whodunit. I knew immediately who did it. I could prove it. I could take it to trial that day and win it. But it wasn't about that. It was that the more I learned about the defendant and his life and the circumstances, the kinds of things that Jarrell was talking about, that one should take into account the trauma of that individual, I really felt incredibly sorry for him that he had gotten to that point in his life where he felt like there was no other choice but to commit this robbery.
So Kamel, this particular thug, this particular criminal, is likely to get some form of a slap on the wrist, some form of reduced charges, some form of an easy plea deal, despite the fact that everyday New Yorkers, real people who ride the subway in the city of New York, have had enough with it. Again, they interview people who are not your wealthy, progressive elites or anything of the sort on the subway track, and they have the most serious, genuine takes that just make the most sense.
Tonight, riders on the same Chelsea platform headed to their New Year's Eve destinations are calling the attack brutal and scary.
I'm ready to go back home. I'm ready to go back home. I came here for a good time, and I'm scared that things like this might happen to me.
They want to hike fares up, and they want to do certain things, but they can't even keep the people of New York City protected. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of sad.
Now look, I work from home. I don't live in the borough of Manhattan, so I haven't had to regularly take the subway every day for a very long time, since I was back in school and since I was back in working in the city of Manhattan. And I can tell you, at the times that I've taken the subway as of late, there is a noticeable, remarkable difference between what was normal back when I was riding it under the Bloomberg administration and what has become normalized now. But also, even though I don't have to deal with this because I work from home, I'm married. My wife does have to take the train each and every day, not only to get to work, but up until this past December, she had to do so in order to get to university because she was in law school. Last semester, thank God we don't have to deal with that anymore. So this is a concern for real people who have to take the subway. And even though I'm at the point in my life where I don't have to do that anymore, again, because I work in this room just with the camera, just with the microphone, and of course, this skeleton right here, the fact of the matter is it is unreal for all these different other various people who work in digital media like myself, who decide to live in the hip parts of Brooklyn or whatever gentrified area that they live in, to talk down to everyday people who have to deal with this time and time again, because it is getting worse. That is not just perception, it's supported by the numbers. And the idea that Democratic Party elites and digital media progressives are going to deny and deflect from that is really just obnoxious in every possible way. And that is a big indicator of why so many counties and so many different demographics in New York's counties, New York City's various counties, have moved to the right in terms of voting, have decided that they've had enough of the criminality because it is real and it is represented by the numbers. But you know what? Maybe you just take a picture with Governor Kathy Hochul and you're going to be A-OK first class all the way. Maybe you just talk about how, oh, you hope somebody gets killed on the subway or victimized by a criminal on the subway so you can get that Daily Wire money, because in reality, you know that you don't have to deal with this. You're going to have the protection that the governor has. And if you decided that you wanted to go back to Jersey and live with your wealthy parents, you could do that in a heartbeat and you would still be able to maintain your stupid ass digital media job. Now, I'd love to say that subway crime is a thing of the past, but the fact of the matter is, rather than actually addressing bail reform, rather than actually changing up the sanctuary city policies, rather than actually dealing with the migrant crisis, New York seems fixated on the idea that the solution is tax drivers, do the congestion pricing in order to give more money to the failing MTA system, and essentially force people into the ever more dangerous subway carts because, you know, we gotta make sure that people ride the subway even if it costs them their lives. And when it does, don't worry about it. We're gonna pretend it's no big deal, and we're gonna say, you know what, in comparison to the entire city of New York, your small death, the death of your relative, you getting robbed, you getting slashed across the face, it's not really all that big of a deal. I mean, when you really think about it, in comparison to all the people in the United States of America, very few people die on the subway. And when you really think about it, in comparison to all the people on planet Earth, very few people die on the New York City public subway. So there's nothing to worry about because I can manipulate statistics in this way in order to hide and obscure the facts and the reality of the situation. But the thing is, I know the numbers. I know the stats. I know what it means that 15 years of deaths on the subway were outdone in a little over 4 years in the city of New York, and we're still running on that trajectory. And you're not going to fool me. You're not going to be able to gaslight me into believing otherwise. And I don't give a damn how much your progressive white guilt is propelling you to go into full denial mode and to kind of see from the perspective of the illegal migrant that set somebody on fire, or the mentally disturbed individual who shoved a man onto the train just because, oh my God, his brain is so vulnerable. So yeah, that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Let's put these nonsensical losers back in 2024 where they belong, from whence they came, and let's move forward and start cracking down on the criminals. As usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the nonsense of a crime denial in the subway. Till next time.